I woke up at 5:40, 2 a.m., local time, to the usual rhythm of my phone buzzing on the glass nightstand beside the hotel bed. A single notification glowed through the darkness. So sorry to hear the news. Can't imagine what you're going through. Sending prayers. Karen Lewis. My dad's second cousin. I blinked twice, reread it. Then again, the message made no sense. News? What news? Singapore was 12 hours ahead of Boston, so I figured someone had jumped the gun on a birthday, or maybe mistook me for someone else. But something about the wording, "what you're going through," sat wrong in my chest. I called Karen. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I called my cousin Ben next. He picked up, groggy. "Hey, Mark. Is this... Are you calling from Emily's phone?" "No. It's me. What's going on?" There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. "Jesus Christ. You're alive?" "Of course I'm alive," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" Ben didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice had dropped to a whisper. "Emily told everyone you were in a car accident. She said you didn't make it. She had a memorial service last week." Silence pressed into my ear. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet like it might answer for her. "A memorial?" I said. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Obituary. Donations in your name. I mean, Jesus, man. We all cried. I hugged your mother." My stomach went cold. Not with grief. With something heavier. "I've been here 3 months," I said, voice flat. "On a consulting job." She knew exactly where I was. Ben exhaled hard. "What the hell is going on?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. I was already pulling open my laptop, fingers flying to search our joint accounts, her recent texts, our home camera app, none of which responded. Every password had been changed. By the time the sun rose over Singapore, I knew one thing. I wasn't dead. But Emily wanted the world to think I was. And I needed to find out why. The week before I flew to Singapore, Emily made blueberry muffins from scratch. She hated baking. Always said it was too precise. But that Wednesday morning, the house smelled like vanilla and brown sugar. She'd even lit a candle. "Just a little send-off," she said, smiling as she handed me a warm one on a napkin. "You'll be gone a while. Might as well leave on a sweet note." I smiled, but something about it didn't sit right. It was the way she avoided eye contact, how her fingers trembled when she poured my coffee, how she flinched when I mentioned the hotel I'd be staying at, as if I were repeating something she didn't want to hear. At the time, I chalked it up to nerves. Emily never loved when I traveled. Said she hated the empty house, the silence, the time zones. I believed her. I shouldn't have. 10 days before I left, my uncle passed away unexpectedly. Stroke. He never had kids, and we'd stayed close since I was little. I visited when others didn't, called on holidays. And when the will was read, my name came up. 2.4 million. No strings attached. Emily cried when I told her. Tears of joy, I thought. "He always said you had a good heart," she'd said, pressing her forehead to mine. "He'd be proud." We made plans. Pay off the mortgage. Maybe finally take that Alaska cruise she kept bookmarking but never actually booking. She even suggested we start looking at investment properties. "I'll handle the research while you're away," she said. Looking back now, I see the shift. How her kisses became tighter. How her texts turned syrupy. How she offered to help organize the financial documents. It wasn't support. It was surveillance. The night before my flight, she made steak, played our wedding song on the Bluetooth speaker, poured my favorite wine. We danced in the kitchen like we were 22 again. She cried when we said goodbye at the airport. Now I wonder if those were tears of guilt. Because while I packed for a business trip, she was packing an escape plan. And while I was flying east, she was planning how to make sure I never came back. Not alive, anyway. I called Emily 12 times in a row. Each time, it went straight to voicemail, the generic one, not the soft, tired recording she used to have. I left 2 messages. The rest I deleted before finishing. What was I going to say? Hi, it's your dead husband calling. Call me back? Her email bounced. User does not exist. Her work email, too disabled. I tried texting. Delivered. No response. I opened our banking app next. We had 3 joint accounts: checking, savings, and a brokerage account we barely touched except during tax season. The checking showed 0.41. The savings, closed. The brokerage, access, revoked. I stared at the screen until my hands went numb. Back in January, we'd sat at the dining table and opened those accounts together after the inheritance came in. I'd said we should be smart about it. Low risk, diversify. Save some. Invest some. Give a little away. Emily smiled and said she trusted me with all of it. Apparently, she'd changed her mind. I tried logging into Facebook. My account was gone. Not deactivated, deleted. Instagram too. LinkedIn. Even my old college alumni portal. Anywhere my name had a digital footprint, it had been scrubbed. I sat back in the hotel chair and rubbed my face, trying to calm the pulse thudding behind my eyes. My wife had done more than lie. She'd erased me. For a moment, I thought about calling the police. Then, I pictured how that conversation would go. Hello, yes. My wife told people I died, but I'm actually alive. And now all our money is gone. They'd think I was delusional. Or worse, involved. No, I needed proof. Facts. Something more than gut instinct. And a bunch of vanished passwords. I sat in the dark hotel room, laptop still open, heart pounding. It was quiet, save for the hum of the AC unit. I felt something shift inside me. No, grief, not rage. Something colder. Focus. She wanted the world to believe I was gone. But she didn't know I was still watching. And I was going to find her. I landed in Boston 2 days later. Long sleeves over a jet-lagged body. And a head full of calculations. I didn't go straight to the house. I went to the storage unit, first box of old tax returns, marriage license, backup hard drive, everything I'd filed away for, just in case. I never thought just in case would be this. The key still worked. One small mercy. Then I drove to the house. Our house. The first thing I noticed was the lawn. It was cut too neatly. Emily always left it a little wild. Said she liked the natural look. This was commercial trimmed. The second thing was the mailbox. Empty. Not just no mail, no mailbox. Taken off the post entirely. I parked across the street and stared at it like it might blink back at me. I didn't go to the front door. I walked around the block, found the old side fence I'd helped rebuild last summer. Someone had repainted it. A new lock on the gate. I pulled out my phone and opened the county records website. The house had sold 2 weeks ago. Cash offer. Escrow closed fast. No forwarding address listed for the previous owner, Emily. Just her maiden name. No one tells you what it's like to stand on a sidewalk outside the house you picked out with your wife, only to find yourself a stranger on the deed. The windows were dark. The porch was swept clean. Like we'd never lived there at all. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Halpern, came out to collect a package. "Mark?" she said, blinking. I nodded once. "I thought you..." She stopped herself. Emily said, "Oh my God." "When did she leave?" I asked. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. "Moving truck came the week after you flew out. Whole place was cleared in a day. She said it was too painful to stay in the house after your accident." I didn't respond. I just looked at the place again. Not just emptied. Sanitized. She'd planned this before I left. Probably before the muffins. Before the goodbye. She wasn't reacting to grief. She'd made sure I wouldn't come back to anything. Except questions. And I intended to answer every one of them. The clerk at the Suffolk County Registry of Vital Records wore reading glasses and a tired smile. She tapped at the keyboard with 2 fingers, the way someone does when their job is more muscle memory than thought. I handed her my ID and said, as casually as I could, "Just checking for an error in the system. Someone told my family I died." She blinked at me like I'd made a bad joke, then typed my name. Her smile dropped. One moment," she said, voice tight. She disappeared into a back room. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A man in a button-down shirt with a badge clipped to his belt followed close behind. "Mr. Bennett," he said slowly, "we have a death certificate on file issued under your name. Cause of death listed as vehicular trauma. Filed 3 weeks ago by your spouse, Emily Bennett." He paused. "There was a funeral." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My hands were still, but every part of me felt like it was vibrating under the skin. "She presented documents," he continued. "A statement from a local physician and a police report, both verified at the time." I forced my voice to work. "I've been in Singapore. Business travel. I never died." He studied me. "You'll need to open a case with the Department of Records, possibly the Attorney General. These things take time." "How much time?" 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer. I laughed once, short and flat. It didn't feel like a laugh. It felt like pressure leaking out of a sealed pipe. Legally, I was dead. A lie signed and sealed by the woman I married. They handed me a packet forms, contact info, procedural steps. It felt like being handed a brochure on how to resurrect yourself. Outside, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry. But the part that won was quiet, calm, planning. She'd erased me on paper. But I could work with that. Because if I was legally dead, I could move however I wanted. Invisible. Untouchable. And most of all unexpected. I made one call. A single name in my phone I hadn't dialed in years. "Mark Bennett," the voice said on the second ring, accented and amused. "I thought you were dead." "Apparently, I am," I replied. Silence. Then laughter. His name was Kai, an old colleague from my days contracting security software overseas. He'd once built a backdoor into a Chinese telecom for the Canadian government and still claimed it was just a favor. We met that night in a cafe in Cambridge Neutral Ground. I told him everything. Not all the emotional pieces, just the mechanics. The forged death certificate, the stolen money, the vanishing act. He listened without interrupting. "She planned it for months," I said. "Started moving pieces before I ever got on the plane." He nodded once. "She's good. She's thorough." Kai sipped his tea. "What do you want to do?" "Stay quiet," I said. "See everything, then strike." He raised an eyebrow. "Legal route will take too long." "I'm not going legal," I said. He smiled. Like I'd passed some kind of test. 3 days later, I had a new name. Michael Warren. Born in Michigan, lived in Oregon, now renting a condo in Back Bay under a generic LLC. Clean credit, spotless ID, driver's license included. Courtesy of someone Kai knew in Jakarta who specialized in administrative accidents. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my sister. I closed all accounts tied to Mark Bennett that were still open, including the secure storage unit. Transferred what little cash I had left to a prepaid card, and deleted every trace of my old self from my devices. No social media. No online banking. No GPS history. Gone. I bought a burner phone, a laptop, rented a car under the new name. Then I drove to San Diego, because that's where the trail led. She thought I was buried, thought she'd won, but I wasn't coming back with grief or vengeance. I was coming back with silence, with patience, with every move calculated, because when someone thinks you're dead, they stop looking over their shoulder, and that's exactly when you strike. San Diego looked the same as it had 3 years ago when Emily and I visited for a wedding. Same breeze off the ocean, same restaurants lining the pier. She'd said she could see herself living here someday. I just hadn't realized she meant without me. The trail hadn't been hard to follow. Kai's contacts pulled real estate records under her maiden name, Emily Cardenas. She'd paid cash for a 200-square-foot high-rise condo in the Marina District. Ocean view, concierge, gated parking. I drove past it at dusk. She'd picked well. Clean lines, white walls, high-end everything. Cold. Like her. The security gate was automated, monitored. I parked a block away and watched through the rearview mirror. She came out around 7:30 p.m., hair curled, heels clicking against the sidewalk. She was dressed for dinner, maybe drinks. She looked the same, just lighter, freer. She didn't look like someone grieving. A man joined her on the sidewalk. Early 40s, tailored suit, expensive watch, law firm tan. They kissed casually before getting into his car. I followed from a distance, just enough to observe. Dinner downtown, valet parking, wine, laughter. 2 hours later, they walked out arm in arm. She leaned in and whispered something to him. He laughed. I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. She wasn't hiding. She didn't think she had to. Later, back in the rental, I pulled her name from public databases under her maiden name. A single result stood out. An interview with a local lifestyle blog about resilience and starting over. She told them her late husband had left her comfortably set and that the transition had been painful but freeing. There it was. She'd rewritten the story. Widow, survivor, beneficiary. She even had a quote. He left me everything. It was unexpected, but I'm grateful. Hi. Everything. I closed the browser. She was comfortable, confident, and completely unprepared for what was coming. I didn't go to my parents' house. Too risky. Instead, I texted my sister, Hannah. Need to see you. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. This isn't a joke. She replied instantly. Where? We met in the back booth of a roadside diner 20 miles from the city. She stepped through the door, took one look at me, and froze. Jesus, she whispered. You're Mark. You're supposed to be dead? I said quietly. Her eyes welled up, and I could see her fighting to keep it together. She slid into the booth without touching me. Emily said it was an accident, she said, voice shaking. There was a funeral. Mom still cries every morning. I know, I said. That's why we're here. I laid out everything. The fake death certificate, the drained accounts, the condo in San Diego, the new boyfriend, the obituary, the will she forged, though I still hadn't seen it firsthand. Just the claim. Hannah listened with her hands clenched under the table. Why? She asked. Why would she do this? Money, I said. Control. Freedom. I don't know. What are you going to do? I looked at her, steady. What I always do. Find the problem. Fix it. Her jaw set the way it used to when we were kids, back when she'd cover for me sneaking in late. I'm in, she said. I nodded. We made a plan. She'd play the part of the grieving sister, stay close to Emily's narrative, keep attending family events. Meanwhile, she'd look for mentions of the will, the finances, anything Emily might have slipped. I want Mom and Dad to know, she said. Not yet, I said. They'll grieve again. Let's wait until there's something solid. We parted outside, in the cold. I'm glad you're alive, she said before getting in her car. So am I replied. But I wasn't back. Not yet. I was still a ghost in my own story. And the haunting had only just begun. Money leaves footprints. Even when you try to cover them, they track through everything: banks, shell accounts, wire transfers. And Emily? She had danced barefoot through wet cement. Kai and I set up shop in a borrowed office above a closed auto body shop in La Mesa. It wasn't much bare walls, flickering fluorescent light, but it had fiber, internet, and silence. That was all we needed. I gave Kai the last known account numbers, routing codes, and Emily's social security info. Within an hour, he was inside the banking maze. "She's smart," he muttered, "but not too smart." The money, what was left of the $2.4 million inheritance, hadn't just disappeared. It had been moved. First into a joint brokerage account, then into a private investment firm in Delaware, then wired out to a numbered offshore account in the Caymans. From there, it splintered 5 separate LLCs, each with vague names like Meridian Assets and Blue Ridge Holdings. Registered in states with lax oversight, they looked like real companies on paper. But they were shells, no employees, no assets beyond what she parked inside them. Then came the most interesting piece. Crawford Hayes LLP, a law firm supposedly handling her trust transition. Except the firm didn't exist, not in any bar registry. The address listed belonged to a strip mall nail salon. And then there were the documents. Kai found 2 PDFs labeled Will Statement, MB. Both bore my name and signature. One even claimed I'd appointed Emily sole executor of my estate. It wasn't just fraud, it was identity theft wrapped in grief. "You want to take this to the police?" Kai asked, spinning in the cracked office chair. "Not yet," I said. "I need more." "More?" I nodded once. "I want her to trip, publicly." He smirked. "Then we wait." I leaned back, watching the Caymans' balance shift from one ghost company to another on the screen. Emily had built a financial graveyard, but I was the one crawling out of it. It happened on a Thursday. Kai was monitoring public records routine sweeps for new filings, corporate updates, property deeds. Mostly noise. Then, he paused. She made a move. He turned the screen toward me. A real estate development filing in Chula Vista, tied to one of the shell companies, Blue Ridge Holdings. It was a small land deal, nothing flashy. But the paperwork required a notarized owner's signature. And there it was, Mark D. Bennett. My name. In ink. Sloppy. Rushed. But definitely not mine. "She's getting cocky," I said. "Or careless," Kai added. We pulled the document. The signature didn't match any from the will or earlier banking transfers. It was a new attempt, a different flourish in the D, a heavier loop in the B. I checked the notary stamp. A name we didn't recognize. Sandra J. Norwell. A search revealed she worked at a title agencion of those fast signing places near the freeway. She'd been suspended once for failing to verify ID. Perfect. I printed the document, logged it with the backup files, and opened a new encrypted folder under the alias Michael Warren. It was time to go quiet. But legal. That week, I met with a private legal firm I'd used years ago for a startup dissolution. One of the partners owed me a favor. Under the name Michael Warren, I filed a report of suspected signature fraud tied to real estate misrepresentation. The goal wasn't prosecution, not yet. The goal was access. With that filing, I could subpoena financials under the fraud case. I could see into the shell companies. More importantly, I could put pressure on the title firm. If they panicked and tried to bury the paperwork, it would only tighten the noose. Emily thought she had erased me. But by signing my name, she'd summoned a ghost. And now, the paper trail she tried to forge would lead her exactly where I wanted her cornered. With no idea who was watching. He introduced himself as Daniel R. Logan, civil litigation attorney. Clean-shaven, firm handshake, salt and pepper at the temples. We met in a cafe off Harbor Drive. I wore neutral tones and a press badge with the name Cal Parker, an alias registered under a now-defunct online finance blog. "I appreciate you making time," I said, voice mild, pen poised. "Just gathering local stories about sudden wealth and estate transitions. You've been connected to Ms. Cardenas?" "Emily?" he said, smiling. "Yeah, we've been seeing each other for a few months. She's incredible. Strong. Been through a lot. I nodded, giving him space. She lost her husband last year, he added, unprompted. Some kind of tragic car accident. Out of the country. I didn't get all the details, she doesn't like to talk about it. Of course, I said, keeping my expression unreadable. She said he left her everything. He went on. House, stocks, some offshore stuff. She's been handling it well. Better than I would, honestly. I made a sympathetic noise. Do you know his name? He hesitated. Mark. Something. I can't remember the last name. Bennett? Barrett? I don't want to get it wrong. My grip on the pen didn't tighten. My breath didn't change. But inside, something cold and exact settled into place. She'd changed the details, blurred the edges just enough to avoid scrutiny. Let the boyfriend think he was helping a grieving woman rebuild her life. Standard con. Personalize the pain. Keep the story soft. Unfalsifiable. Was there a will? I asked casually. He nodded. She said everything was documented. Handled privately. And no family contesting it? He laughed a little. She told me the family hated her. Blamed her for his death. Didn't want a dime. That part wasn't even a lie. My parents had stopped mentioning her name months ago. My sister still played along, feeding me updates in whispers. When I left the cafe, Daniel still believed he'd done a kind favor for a dead man's widow. But now I had confirmation. Emily's lies weren't just legal. They were emotional too. She was building a future on a foundation of fraud. And I was about to pull the first brick loose. I started small. A scanned copy of the forged real estate signature was uploaded anonymously to a title insurance watchdog forum, then quietly shared to 3 real estate Facebook groups under a pseudonym, just enough for someone to ask questions. Next, I sent a redacted version of the shell company ledger, no names, just numbers and routing patterns to a financial crimes investigator at a local agency. No return address, no request for reply. But I knew they'd look. Then came the family. Hannah helped. One envelope at a time, dropped into the mailboxes of cousins, aunts, my college roommate. Each one contained an obituary clipping, followed by screenshots of Emily's interview quotes. Then, the land sale document with my forged signature. No context. No explanation. Just enough truth to make the ground shake. By the end of the week, Emily started calling people, then texting them. Then, according to Hannah, showing up at a cousin's house in tears. People are saying awful things, she'd told them. Someone's pretending to be Mark. It's sick. My cousin texted Hannah the next morning. She's lying. You can see it in her eyes. Good. 2 days later, Emily changed her phone number, deleted her Facebook account. Her Instagram went private. Her LinkedIn disappeared. Panic was setting in. That night, I sat in the rental's kitchen with the lights off, watching the city blink through the blinds. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. The illusion was cracking. Her life's legal, financial, emotional were under scrutiny now. The storybook widow routine was unraveling in real time. And the people who once whispered condolences were now whispering doubt. She had no idea where the pressure was coming from. That was the point. Let her fear the shadows. Let her chase ghosts. Because when the walls finally caved in, I wanted her to look up and realize the man she buried had been standing there the whole time. I wore a navy suit. Nothing flashy. Crisp lines, solid tie, shoes polished until they caught the light. I hadn't worn a suit in over a year, not since the funeral I didn't attend. The mediation was scheduled for 9:00 a.m., neutral ground, an upscale office suite in downtown San Diego. Emily believed she was meeting with a financial mediator regarding an anonymous challenge to one of her property holdings. The paperwork had come through a firm connected to Kai's network, all perfectly legal. She thought it was just routine. I arrived early and waited in the conference room, back to the door. 2 lawyers sat across from Mione for the property firm. the other representing me under my true name. Legally reinstated 3 days earlier by court order. The door opened behind me. Clicking heels, whispered voices, the sound of a chair sliding back. Then silence. It took exactly 4 seconds before she spoke. "No," she said softly. "No. This isn't possible." I turned and looked her in the eyes. She looked older, thinner. Her mouth opened, but no words came. "Hello, Emily," I said. The color drained from her face. Her eyes darted toward the lawyers, searching for an escape hatch. "There's been a mistake," she said. "This is someone is impersonating." My attorney slid a stack of documents across the table. Birth certificate, passport, legal reinstatement order, a notarized declaration of identity. "You filed a death certificate for a man who wasn't dead," he said calmly. "You forged documents, laundered inheritance funds, and impersonated a deceased spouse for financial gain." The mediator sat still, silent, watching. The door opened again. 2 plainclothes officers entered. "Emily Cardenas," one said, producing a badge. "You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and multiple financial crimes." She turned to me, something breaking behind her eyes. Not grief, not guilt, just fear. "This was never about revenge," I said quietly, as they cuffed her. "This was about telling the truth." They led her out of the room. She didn't look back. I exhaled once, slow. For the first time in a year, I felt like a person again. Not a ghost. Not a signature. Just me. Alive. The story broke 3 days later. Widow arrested in stolen identity scheme. Husband was alive all along. The photo they used of Emily was from her interviews, smiling, serene, framed by the lie she'd built. The contrast was brutal. Her assets were frozen within 24 hours. The condo locked. The accounts flagged. The offshore funds traced and held. Her boyfriend, Daniel Logan, issued a single public statement. "I was deceived. I am cooperating fully with authorities." He didn't visit her in jail. I didn't feel pity. Just a strange kind of finality. Like finishing the last chapter of a book you didn't enjoy, but couldn't put down. The media wanted sound bites. The man who came back from the dead. The ghost husband. I gave one interview recorded. Quiet. Honest. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I told the truth. They aired it twice. After that, I stopped answering calls. The best part came a week later. My sister threw a party. She called it a resurrection. My parents came. So did my cousins. 2 college friends I hadn't seen in years. Even a neighbor from childhood who used to mow our lawn for $5. Someone brought a cake shaped like a headstone. Except the writing read, "Not dead. Just getting started." It was morbid and perfect. We laughed. And for the first time in over a year, it wasn't strained. I stood in the backyard of Hannah's house, drink in hand, watching kids run across the grass. A few feet away, my father wiped his eyes when he thought no one was looking. My mother didn't stop holding my arm for more than 10 minutes. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left," I said. Later that night, as the guests trickled out and the lights dimmed, I sat under the patio with Hannah. "Is it over?" she asked. I thought about that. "No," I said finally. "But it's different now." She nodded. "You still don't hate her, do you?" "No," I said. "Hate's too loud. I've got other things to do. Like rebuild. Like live. Like never disappear again." The system saw me as dead once. Now, I made sure they'd never forget I was alive. I didn't go back to Boston. Didn't reclaim my old job. Didn't ask for the house back, or the accounts, or the routines that once felt like stability. Some things, once broken, don't get repaired. They get replaced. Thoughtfully. Carefully. I bought a house outside of Bend, Oregon. 2 bedrooms. pine walls. A creek that runs behind the property and keeps the air cool at night. No gate, no cameras, just space. I chopped wood the first week, realized I liked it. I started going to the local farmers market, learned names, faces, picked up the habit of handwritten grocery lists again. I hadn't written anything longhand in years, but it felt grounding, real. My phone buzzed less. That was a good thing. I reconnected with people who mattered: my childhood friend Jared, now a high school teacher in Eugene. My cousin Liz, who sent me a birthday card every year even when she thought I was in the ground. I called her in April. She cried, then swore at me, then asked if I wanted to come over for barbecue. That was when I knew I was really back. Not just legally, personally. The trial date for Emily's charges is set for September. I won't be attending. My deposition is already on record. The prosecutors have everything they need. She'll face her consequences. And I've faced mine. One night, under a quiet Oregon sky, I sat at the old oak desk in my new study, opened a notebook. Clean pages, crisp spine. I wrote 6 words at the top of the first page: how I watched my own funeral. Underneath it, I added, and took my life back. Not a revenge story. A resurrection story. Because the truth is, I died long before Emily told the world I was gone. It took losing everything: my name, my marriage, my money, to understand what I never should have settled for. And now, what I'm building, it's mine. Every piece of it. The kind of life you don't need to fake to escape. The kind of life you protect. With both hands. With both eyes open. With your own damn name on the deed. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.